African authorities are investigating allegations that Russian companies are recruiting young women under the guise of overseas employment. The recruitment efforts claim to address both Russia's labor shortages and South Africa's unemployment rate. But reports suggest that jobs advertised in sectors including construction and hospitality may in fact place workers in drone production factories instead. Authorities are now scrutinizing these schemes amid growing concerns over the possible exploitation of vulnerable individuals, particularly in light of previous human trafficking cases with similar patterns. For more on the story, we're joined now by Emma van der Walt. She's the founder and CEO of the Brave to Love Foundation. Emma, it's great to have you on. And just some clarity for our viewers, the Brave to Love SA is a counter-human trafficking NGO, and you were quite instrumental in the previous issue that unfolded in Myanmar/Thailand, where close to 200 South Africans were brought back to the country.
Yes, correct. So one of the victims on that side's mother actually reached out to us when she was lured for a fabulous job within Thailand, but then ended up in a scamming compound within Myanmar. So currently we're standing on 26 South Africans only being repatriated, but we know an estimate of 200 still being in the compound in Myanmar. Currently our organization is actively directly linked to some of the victims that are trying to escape out of the compound, working with government, working with NGOs on Myanmar side to get the South Africans back. Some of them are extremely vulnerable, a very poor health, so they need to be repatriated quite quickly. But it's a very lengthy process, and scanning compounds run by the Chinese mafia.
So yeah, thank you for the clarity around those numbers, Emma. So 23 of them repatriated to the country in March of this year. As you say, a large group still remaining in Southeast Asia because they don't have the means, I suppose among the other issues that they face as well, they don't have the means to purchase a plane ticket.
Yeah, not just that. For them to escape the compound, they actually need to pay their debt. It's debt control. So they kept in the slavery. The Chinese are commanding 100,000 rand or 50,000 baht to actually get them out of the compound. So because these people, these bosses are paying for flight tickets to get these South Africans there, and then that's how they control. So they're threatening their lives to get them out. But this is specifically the KK Park compound within Myanmar. There has been an agreement signed by the KK Park that they will not lure, or they will not. If a victim wants to leave the compound, they will not hold them against their will. But currently, we still see the conditions. They are not releasing these South Africans just to walk out of the compound.
So it's operated, these compounds, by Chinese mafia networks. What's been the working relationship between the South African government and the Chinese government on this issue, if anything?
Yes, correct. So the first South Africans that actually came back was actually China that got involved with these compounds, because there was a Chinese celebrity that was kidnapped, lured to the compound to be used, and that's when China actually did step up to, so we know at least China is reacting, but it's not just South Africans. We know the highest country is Ethiopians from Africa that are being lured to these compounds. We know from Burundi, Uganda, all over Kenya. Kenya has actually got a large operation currently to repatriate some of their victims on the Myanmar side. So it's a very large operation. One compound, the KK compound, it's a military compound where 7,000 people are just in one compound. So it's a massive operation of billions and billions of dollars that are being made by scamming people out of their funds.
So let's talk about the latest issue now, the recruitment efforts now apparently by companies in Russia. They're advertised as jobs in the construction and hospitality sector. They're using South African influencers in some cases. The videos advertising these job opportunities look legitimate. Many of them have now been removed from these social media accounts. How do you understand this kind of modus operandi? Is it newer in this sector of human trafficking or possible human trafficking? Yeah.
Yes, correct. No, exactly. So we first look at the three aspects of trafficking. We look at the recruitment, the transportation phase, and then the exploitation phase. So this is obviously the recruitment. So we need to prove all three to prove human trafficking. But the challenge here is that sex trafficking and labor trafficking are still the highest forms, and we know now trafficking into criminality with the scamming compounds have also been a large problem for South Africans. But we've seen trends. The countries that are globally the highest on trafficking is still China. It is still Russia. It is still Brazil. So a lot of your BRICS countries are extremely high on human trafficking, so human slavery. So it is a very high red flag country when Russia at this point, because we also know in the past that trafficking is a means of funding terrorism, funding war. This is why these scamming compounds, and these scamming compounds are not only in Myanmar. We know there are Eastern European branches for these scamming compounds. So it's a very high risk for any person to go over for recruitment. And the challenge is these influencers that are recruiting South Africans, because they can be kept liable to a co-conspirator to the crime. Or are they recruiters in the trafficking, in the process?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the fact that our unemployment rate is what it is, and desperation is what it is for many parts, for most of our country. If I'm going to see an ad put out by an influencer that I know very well, perhaps even someone on the brink of celebrity, it's very likely that I'm going to trust. There's a level of trust that is inherent in the person who is putting out this message.
Yes, correctly. And the sad thing, we always think it's a male behind the recruitment phase, and many times females are used to recruit people to lure them in. And there's definitely these influencers are getting paid definitely for these ads, so that's also being used as instrumental to recruit South Africans. And we've seen it with the Myanmar cases where our unemployment rate of youth is 60% or higher. So our youth are looking for opportunities abroad. But it's very, very important, if you are looking for opportunities to go work abroad, that you need to contact your embassy and also the human traffic hotline. The human traffic hotline actually screens overseas jobs. If you have any form of uncertainty of a job, make sure that you verify that it's a legitimate job, that you work through the right agencies to actually work abroad.
What do we make of the fact that this particular ad does target young women between the ages of, I think it's 22 and 28, I might have the ages slightly off, but it's women in their early to mid-20s, women specifically. What do we make of that?
Yes, correct. So for us working with sex trafficking for such a long time, this is a very high red flag and deep concern, because we always look at the sex trade, what is the demand? It's looking for females. Why not males? Why only females? We know that the sex trade are flooded with females that are, and then the sex trafficking is a very violent form of human trafficking. It is the amount of abuse and violence that goes apart with sex trafficking. So this is a high risk, and we know that even Russian women and even women from the Ukraine, Eastern European women, are being sold into sex trafficking within Europe. So Russian women even are high trafficking. So why is they suddenly recruiting females from Africa? What is the demand? The sex buyers, or who's demanding the females to come there? But obviously we don't have the evidence on the table yet. But it's from outside a high red flag for females to go into these areas to be recruited.
I mean, even more shocking, my team has just whispered in my ear and said that actually the age group being advertised for is 18 to 22.
Yeah, that's very concerning. And once again, for me, that the chances of this girl ending up in the sex trade is very high, and she will be locked up in a brothel run by. And the problem is with traffickers, they will isolate the female, or they isolate their victim. So as soon as they're from their safe zone, from their own country, that's when that victim will disappear. And I don't know if the destination country will necessarily be Russia. They might be stay over country and then end up in Europe or ended up in another country somewhere. So who's recruiting, who's making money? It's a high concern. And once again, they're recruiting from South Africa. Are there other countries that they're targeting as well?
Yeah, certainly, especially given with the Myanmar Thailand issue from earlier this year. There's 7,000 other individuals from various other countries. So I want to just focus on this latest recruitment story, Emma, because Let's say these individuals are ending up in Russia. Is this something that the government would be aware of, or are these mafia groups that are operating on their own terms?
Correct. So we need to understand, when it comes to trafficking and traffickers, they will always align themselves. We're talking about organized crime. It's one form of income, yes, sex trafficking or labor trafficking, but we're looking at organized crime, and these organized crime syndicates will position themselves even within government or within law enforcement within a country. We've seen the pattern in South Africa, so they will align themselves to operate, and then it becomes a large scale. If they're at a point of such a large scale of formally using influencers to advertise for jobs on a social platform, then they are quite comfortable. They're not doing it hidden in a undercover way. So that's the concern. So who are they comfortable with? And you don't know what's happening on that side. We saw those females in the past being lured to Israel. That we saw Nigerian and South African citizens that were involved in the trafficking of the females into a brothel in Israel. So yes, these things are happening, and I'm concerned for South Africa that the females are leaving. That's a massive concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder whether, given what happened at the beginning of the year, sort of March to July, with those 23 South Africans rescued from Thailand, many more are still stuck there, that we haven't kept a focus on this issue of human trafficking and of looking out for red flags when there are jobs being advertised. I suppose because of the news cycle in our country, things move so quickly, but this is also a warning to influencers, right? Because they would have been paid, in our experience, probably a substantial amount of money. We're all looking to earn an income, but a serious warning. I mean, this is the absolute last thing you want to be a party to if it does turn out to be a human or sex trafficking ring.
Correct. And what people don't understand is, yes, you can go over and possibly be trafficked over, but there's a place where we talk about, specifically in psychology, where there's a switch of becoming a victim to actually becoming the trafficker.
Sure.
And this is concerning because a lot of the 200 South Africans that are currently in Myanmar, we need to screen to say who of them are actually recruiting other South Africans into trafficking. So are they also criminal? And then they need to be arrested for recruiting South Africans, because we know there are South African recruiters that are also involved in this process, getting other South Africans. Although they were initially might have been recruited, but they have familiarized themselves so with the Chinese bosses that they have stepped over that mark of actually becoming the trafficker.
It's chilling. Emma, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. Emma van der Walt is the founder of Brave to Love SA. It's a counter-human trafficking NGO, and please do note, if you are looking to find work outside of the country, there is actually a human trafficking hotline that you can call to make sure that the job offer is legitimate. This story is one we're going to continue tracking even tomorrow here on Newsfeed AM.